Nina's here. We'll get started in a few minutes. I'm going to let some people in before we get started officially. Make sure.
Yeah, no worries. That's fine.
How was your trip back home after Advocacy Day?
Oh, it was really good. I mean, I think I felt like we had a really successful trip talking to the staff people, and then we were able to talk to Chris Ward. We were able to talk to, I think there was someone else, but I felt like we made a really good impression. Of course, that's one person, it's not the whole, but I think if we keep doing it, it really just they just need to hear that early childhood is something that is crucial in California. It's not a daycare anymore. It's a preschool, and it's a quality preschool, and we need to pay the teachers, and and they need to realize that there's got to be some changes along the line.
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. We're just going to hold off for a few minutes on getting officially started on the presentation, just to allow a couple more people to come in, and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, it looks like it's slowed down a little bit on letting people in, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the ECE Voices advocacy training on hosting in-person meetings. So this is for hosting either at your agency, or if you want to set up an in-person meeting to go to the Capitol and meet with a legislator there. We're kind of going to review a few of those different options for you. My name is Justina Erpelding. I work at Every Child California. I'm the advocacy organizer. I'll be presenting tonight with Juliet, and I'll let Juliet introduce herself.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time on your busy days to spend some more time with us. I'm Juliet Terry. I am a government relations specialist with the Child Care Resource Center. We're a large R&R, or resource and referral, and AP administrator for Southern California, but I'm situated up here in Sacramento full time, and I am the Region 3 lead advocate along with Heidi Kaiser, who's not with us tonight, who's with Child Action. And so I'm really excited to get to know you guys a little bit more and talk about what I spend a lot of my time doing. Thanks.
And a little housekeeping, we have a chat function here. Feel free to use the chat function during the training to talk to each other, to ask us questions. Also, you can use the Q&A. Juliet and Adam North from Every Child California and I will keep an eye on that Q&A and try to answer your questions. After the training, we will send a follow-up email thanking you for coming, and also giving you a link to the resource page, which is going to give you this presentation in PDF form. You can watch this again if you want to. It's also on our YouTube channel, and also every resource that we're going to talk about tonight will have a link on that page so that you can access it. And again, if you've been to any of my trainings before, you know that we're a pretty laid back crew here. So please don't feel like you're interrupting us. I really like it to be interactive because I want you to leave feeling like whatever you need to be addressed has been addressed. So I want you to leave feeling like, okay, I feel more comfortable with this advocacy technique. And so I'm going to be asking you some questions. If you don't feel like speaking up, go ahead and use the chat function on there, and we'll read that to everyone. So let's go over what we'll be talking about tonight. The quick agenda is, like I just said, we're going to talk a little bit about what your experience has been in setting up meetings and attending meetings. I know we just had a big advocacy day at the Capitol, so some of you were there and were able to meet with your legislators. We're going to do a quick recap of how to find your representatives. That's something that we have done a couple weeks of trainings on, so you might be familiar, but if you're new here tonight, we'll run through that real quick for you. And then how do you go about inviting a legislator to your agency for like a site visit? And how do you set up an in-person meeting and go to either their local office, or you want to go to the Capitol here in Sacramento and meet with them? Who do you meet with, and what do you talk about? What happens after the meeting are the topics that we'll be going over. So before we get started, I would like to be able to talk to you and have Juliet and I kind of understand a little bit about your expectations and your experience in this topic. So if anyone's interested, you can either put in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and chat with us. of what brought you to the training and what you're hoping to take away from it. You had a quiet crew tonight. I can tell you for myself, before I started going to meet with legislators, I was a little bit nervous on how the process was of going to the Capitol and going to the swing space, even just navigating the building and understanding that and who was I supposed to meet with and what was I supposed to talk about. So when I build these trainings, I kind of come from that point of view of someone who maybe has not done it before. What would you need to feel comfortable to do it? So we're going to cover those. If you don't know who your representatives are, that's kind of the basics that we're going to start with, because you want to make sure that you're not wasting your time by meeting someone who is not the decision maker for your community. So I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next slide. Okay. So before you're going to set up your meeting, you just need to know who your representative is, because meeting with the person who makes the decisions for your community is going to be the most fruitful for you. When you know who your representative is, you can save their webpage, you can learn all about them, and you have all their contact information. They care about their community, and they have resources and staff available to meet with you and discuss the issues going on in your community to take back to the legislator if the legislator is not available. So I want to walk you through what that looks like to find your representative. And again, everything I have here is going to be available for you. So these links that you see here will be available for you to see as well. But when you go to findyourrep.legislator.ca.gov, it brings up this page. This is the page where you're going to put in the address, the street address of where you want to find the legislator. So if you're wondering who represents where you work, you'd want to put your work address. If you want to know who represents where you live, put your home address in there. So I have a screenshot here that shows you both what it looks like to put your address in and the next screen that comes up. So for me, where I live, my representatives are Kevin McCarty and Angelique Ashby. Those blue names on there are clickable links that take you to their website. So by having that, you'll have all their contact information. So this is a great place to start. When you go to their website, it looks like this. So this is for Kevin McCarty. You can see that it tells you on the top menu bar a little bit about him, his district, the legislation that he's authored, a little bit of news out there about him, and how to contact him. So this is where I would start. So I would go out to Kevin's website and send a message. A lot of times when you click on that contact, it'll give you the option for a speaking engagement or going to the Capitol or a local visit. Every website that they have is a little bit different, but they seem to tend to use very similar templates for their websites. So either way, through this, you'll be able to contact them. And then I want to show you real life. If I can get my computer screen to work with me. Oh, nope, went to the next page. We'll save that. So we're going to start there and just contact them and request a meeting. So part of setting up a meeting is not only knowing who you want to go see, that's going to make the most difference, but you're also going to want to know their scheduling so that you know a good time to meet with them and where. So this is a quick rundown, but I have a link there that takes you to the deadline so that you can look at what their schedule looks like throughout the year. But a great time to visit locally or have them visit you locally is in the summer through December. That's when they're on break and they're usually home in their home cities and they're working locally. So this is a great time to reach out and have them either visit or you can go visit with them. Now they're going to be in the Capitol working from January through June. Expect January to be a pretty crazy time for them because they're just getting back to the office and the legislative session is just starting for them. So if you set up a meeting in January, just be flexible with them and know that you're probably not going to meet with the legislator themselves, but with a staffer. they have local offices that have staffers there all the time. So always keep that in mind as well. And then, of course, that link that lets you kind of see a deeper look into their deadlines and their schedules. So, how to set a meeting? Like I said, you can go out to the website and use the contact form on the website. That'll go to their office. And in there, you're going to put, it actually makes you put your address so you make sure that you're contacting the right person. And it also makes you put a topic in there because every legislator has staff that specializes in different areas. So for us, we're going to want to talk to staff members that are familiar with early childhood education, and that's who you're probably most likely going to meet with. Sometimes they bring them with them if they come as well. You can also call your legislator's office to set up a meeting, and you can send an email directly from your email to them as well. If you don't hear back within 48 hours, I would probably give them a couple days because just depending on their workload, they may not be able to get back to you. But I would say after 2 days, it's free game to reach back out to them and just confirm that they did receive your request. And then on here, I also put the Assembly website and the Senate website. If you wanted to see all of their information, you can go out to the general website and just click on where I put below members on the Assembly website and senators on the Senate website. It'll give you a list of all of them. On that page, it gives you a link to all the committees that they work on. It gives you a link to their website as well and contact information. So before you have a meeting with a legislator, either bringing them to your office or going to meet them, you're going to want to learn about them, which is the nice thing about having access to their website. On there, you can read their biography. And it's really interesting to read that because you're going to be able to see their background information, what brought them to your community, if they're originally from your community, and what they're passionate about. And if it's early childhood education, that's amazing. If it's not, and that's not their forte, then you get an opportunity to really reach out to them and explain what it is and why it's so important to them. I also think it's a nice idea to look at what committees they work on. So if you remember back in like Legislation 101 training, we talked about how assembly members and senators also break up into smaller groups and work on what's called committees. And those are specialized areas that laws are created for. So for our area, it would be Education Committee. It would be Human Services Committee. And if they sit on those committees, that's like a double whammy. It's wonderful. You have someone that's going to be speaking on the topics that are close to your heart. So again, I put some more links there for you. And then we were going to run through and look at Angelique Ashby's website. I'm going to skip that right now, and we'll go on to the next page. So I just want to pause because I've thrown out a lot of information. We've talked about how to find your representative, reading through their website, contacting them, prepping for the meeting. So I just want to check in with everyone first before I go on and just see how are you feeling about finding your legislators? Everyone feeling pretty good about that? Seems pretty easy to get out to. I see a thumbs up. That's good. And then does anyone have any questions in regards to using the Assembly websites to find their information or any prep work that goes into before you have a meeting with a legislator? Like we're doing pretty good. Okay, well, remember you can bring up anything you want to during this training. So I want to break down the difference between like a community visit and a site tour. So let's get into that. And then also I've created a checklist. So I think Adam will drop that in our chat. And that just is a checklist to prepare you for having a legislator or a local leader come to your agency to visit you. So why host a meeting in your community? It is a great opportunity to either have a staff member or a legislator that represents you to meet you in their community, the community members, and see where you work and what you do for their community. I would say when you host that, you want to invite your coworkers to be there and your peers. to give them a chance to also meet with the local leader and legislator to be able to talk and share your stories with them so that they understand deeper what your community needs. So I think that this would be a wonderful opportunity for you. And if you guys ever have any questions or need any help setting up a meeting like this, you just let me know. So for site tours, you're showing the legislator and the community leaders and staffers the services that you provide, and it really helps them understand the importance that your job is for the children and family and employees that you have. So they can see firsthand why the issues that we're having right now are so important. And I just put a list of a few things that what we hear out there right now, because we know that we received some wins during this last legislative session of the family fees being lowered. And we know that the reimbursement rate methodology is being worked on to be the true cost of care. So showing them how great those changes have been and why it's important to keep it consistent since there's an expiration date on those. Seeing it firsthand is a great impactful way of sharing that with your leaders. And like I said earlier, you want to invite your peers. It's nice to have a group there to meet with them, to be able to share their stories with them. It's so impactful for you to have a unified message. So I would say a little bit of prep time, maybe through an email, to get everyone who's going to come to be have the same messaging together, so that the legislator isn't there hearing a bunch of different ideas and stories, but that you guys are together and unified on what you're asking them. I would say pick a couple of your top priorities and stick with those. Maybe put it into a document that you're going to print out and give the legislator or the leader that's there so that they can take it with them. Otherwise, they're jotting down notes, and it's probably better to have it directly from you. Make sure that you're giving them contact information, business cards, so that they can follow up with you, so that you can become that trusted source of information. If they have questions, they know that they can call you and get clarification on an issue. Whenever you host a meeting like this, if you have the availability to set it up as a Zoom as well, that increases your chance of having someone be able to attend. So you could reach out to the legislator and say, we're having this event. It's going to be for 2 hours on this date. If you're not able to come in person or send a staffer, I do have Zoom capability. Would you like to join that way? I know I've had success in the past that way, having a staffer attend our meetings. Okay, so have any of you had a staffer come or a legislator come to your site? Well, sounds like it's a new opportunity that you can take advantage of. Okay, if you had, I was going to have you share a little bit about how the site tour was with everyone. I know that we did it in Gilroy, and we had a couple legislators there, and they were able to walk through Go Kids in Gilroy and see how their program runs, and they found it really interesting. So at this point, I'm going to pass over the presentation to Juliet to go over some legislative visit information.
Thank you, Justina. Okay, so for those of you who logged on a couple minutes late, I'm Juliet Terry. I'm a lead advocate with ECE Voices Region 3. I went ahead and popped in the chat all of the counties that our region covers. It's a really big area, and I'm trying my best to connect with folks living in that area. So if you do, let me know. I'd love to connect with you. So part of what I do as a professional advocate is spend a lot of time walking around the halls at the Capitol and doing legislative visits. My office is actually just on the other side of the Capitol in the photo you see. And so I'm just going to go over with you what those visits look like, some of the more simple logistics of getting there, getting situated, and how those meetings go. Okay, so the Capitol and what we call the swing space. So I've only been doing advocacy now for a little over a year and a half. And when I heard the swing space, I thought, like, what is this? A playground? I don't know where this is where people go and work. Yes, they do. The Capitol is currently under construction. The Capitol Dome itself is located on 10th and L Street in Sacramento. Because the Capitol is under construction, most of the legislators' offices and where they spend their day and having committee meetings, many committee meetings, not all of them, is located in what they call the swing space, which is a nice new building right across the street from the Capitol at 1021 O Street. When you all are coming up here to do a legislative visit, and if you're driving in, please keep in mind that parking is pretty challenging for both the Capitol and the swing space, at least on the street. There are a lot of garages in the area that you can park in, but do expect to be paying a bit of money for parking. Both of these buildings, when you enter, do require you to go through a checkpoint, pretty similar to an airport, but you don't have to take your shoes off. And yes, you do have to take your laptops out of your bags, which is not my favorite thing. In the swing space, there are lots of signs directing you to the right destination. Legislator offices are numbered by the floor they're on. So let's say the office number is 4310. That's going to be on the 4th floor. And it's pretty easy to find where the offices are. They're kind of in a large circle. There are elevators that are in the swing space, and they can be a bit difficult and slow. I know when I went over last week, they now have folks helping people from the 1st floor get up to other floors to navigate. So that's been very helpful. But my main point is you're going to want to have a lot of time ahead to get where you want to go. I usually leave my office right across the street 30 minutes before a meeting at least. Once you get yourself into the legislator's office, each legislator does have their own personal office, so there's no sharing. There's going to be somebody in that front room area at the desk, usually the scheduler. Sometimes it's somebody else helping cover. They're going to welcome you, and you tell them that you are there with your group in your name. And usually you would like to remind them which staffer that you have scheduled your visit with, because there's lots of staffers covering a lot of different topic areas in each office. The offices in this swing space are really small. There's barely enough room for those poor staff people to have enough room to work. So always tell them if you're going to be bringing a larger crowd, and typically anybody more than 5 people, I would say 4 in my experience, they're going to want a conference room to be booked so there's at least enough space. Well, you guys are probably going to be meeting out in the hallways, standing up. Don't show up unannounced. That's something I do since I'm a professional advocate and I just go and bother people in my free time. But for you who have lots of other time constraints taking care of children and families, make your time worth it, book an appointment. It's very, very good to come prepared so you know exactly what you want to talk about and what types of materials you want to leave behind. There's going to be a lot of questions from the people that you're talking to in these offices. Most of the time, folks don't really know much about the childcare system and how it works. So answer them to the best of your ability, but it's completely okay to say, you know what, I don't really know the answer to that question, but I'm going to figure that out for you and follow up. And that's a really great way to keep a connection going after your visit, is to follow up with the answer to those questions. Legislative staff are going to become your best friends as an advocate. You will most often be meeting during a legislative visit with staff people. It's very rare to actually get FaceTime with the legislator themselves. They usually assign every staff member within the legislative office several topic areas. So you're probably going to be talking to somebody who covers human services stuff, all education, things like that. On the off chance they might specialize in early education, and that's a win for us because they know what we're talking about. They will write down, they do make note of everybody who comes or into the office, calls the office, and has meetings. That's part of public record stuff, so that does get recorded. So these visits really do matter. And yes, these staff members are very much in charge of every facet of these legislators' lives, including their schedules, and they give advice and counsel to the legislators. Essentially, if the legislator themselves is not super interested or already knowledgeable in this area, their extent of their knowledge is probably going to be what that legislative staff member tells them about this. So what you tell that staff member is very important because that's what's going to end up in the ear of the legislator. And the relationship building with staff members is super important. I would say it's more important than getting facts across sometimes, because then that person remembers you and remembers the issue in general and feels an emotional connection to it. One thing I really like to do when I have these meetings is ask staffers, like, do you have kids? Do you have young kids in your family? That usually draws them in personally, so it feels a little more like there's more at stake for them and it has their deeper attention. So during the meeting, introduce yourself and everyone who has joined. So you do a little round table of introductions. Tell them what type of work you do and what causes or issues are bringing you in today. I usually like to also check in with whoever I'm meeting with and ask them, how much do you know about the childcare system? Sometimes I do have a staff member I'll meet with, they're pretty knowledgeable about the childcare system. Sometimes they barely know anything, and there's going to be some basic education that you're going to need to do just to get the conversation going about the issue in the first place. So always really good to temperature check their knowledge. Something that is really effective during meetings is sharing your personal stories from your community and what's causing issues within the community. Again, these should be legislators that represent you and your district and your community, and so their interests are with you and what's happening in that community. Particularly, every legislator annually will set forth a kind of set list of goals or legislative priorities that they would like to bring up that year. If your topic is something that's also a priority of the legislator, that's even better. I know a few legislators have been in the early childhood space, and they have a real stake in it and interest in it. It's really nice when you're speaking about issues to also share any solutions, statistics that you know about that are active in the field or that are pilots or anything that you see as a bright spot, and leave detailed information with them about that. And then, of course, leave your contact information. If you don't have a business card, it's really great to always follow up via email, because between a piece of paper and an email, that's going to be the two ways that they're going to keep track of you, besides digging through the scheduler's notes about who came in that day. Okay, I just spoke a lot. And I know that not a lot of you have done these visits. Some of you did with our advocacy day a few weeks ago, which is awesome. So I'm just curious, do you have any questions about visits? Any success stories from our last advocacy day that you want to share? Or any like terrible visits? I know sometimes it's really hard to get people interested. Hi, Patricia.
Hi. So I went on Advocacy Day, and I was with a group of, we all had, there was teachers, there was a director, I'm a liaison. So it was a real good group of people that had a resource teacher group of people that were able to share with the different staffers that we spoke with. And I really liked Chris Ward, and I know that he's more on housing, but he was just very warm, welcoming, and wanted to hear all of our stories, was like very, very, agreeing with us that there is a need for teachers to get higher pay, and that the early childhood education be recognized at a greater level. So it was really nice. And then when we went to Brian Jones, I believe that was his name, that staffer was completely different. So not welcoming at all, had a very like stoic face. We walked in, and we were all kind of like looking at each other, but I did break the ice and said exactly what you said. Do you have children? And he said no. And I said, do you have nieces and nephews? And he said no. So I was like, okay, well, we're going to share our story anyways. But he was very like, not very engaging, but I still felt like we left sharing our story and sharing our points of view and sharing what we think is important in our early childhood careers, and how it does affect all of California. Every parent needs childcare, every parent needs preschool. So we, basically said that, but it was a vast difference between different visits.
Yes, thank you for sharing, Patricia. I completely empathize with the uninterested staffer. There comes a point in some meetings where you just can tell they're not gonna give you what you want as far as being interested in it. And so don't feel bad about it. Do your best. You're always really putting forth, it sounds like your passion, Patricia. That's what shines through in your care for families and children. I always love to, because I have a child development background. I've also been a child care provider myself. I love to drop the fact that 90% of brain development happens between 0 to 5 for those staffers who are completely uninterested. To me, I've found that usually gets like, oh, wow, that's a lot. Like, yeah, this is really important, you guys. Like, your brain was really mushy up until 6, and then it's pretty well formed. So usually the fun facts might get them going. But again, if you're not getting that energy back, don't worry about it. They have the information, they have your contact info. If they want to hear more, they're going to reach out. So thank you for that. Anybody else want to share before we move on?
I was just going to say that, Patricia, you leaving that information there is perfect because, like we said, they do a write-up and it goes without the facial expressions. It goes on to where it needs to go. So, but just like us, everyone has an off day. And in January, being in there when the legislative process first starts, I know that some of them are so exhausted. And then when you're part of a huge advocacy day like we were, they probably had, 5 meetings before you showed up. So, yes,
Yeah,
I
you want
do.
for lunch because that's when they're like alert. After lunch, it's like they want to take a nap. So
That's true. I found that to be very true, Patricia. Okay. So we're going to go over just a little bit of what we're hearing on the street as far as issues that us as advocates in the space are going to be continuing to talk about this year. And then we'll also talk a little bit about budget after that. So top priorities this year is definitely ensuring parental choice for childcare. That whole mixed delivery discussion is something I'm deeply a part of, as well as I know I'm sorry, Every Child California is. So we are continuing that process this year. We're also looking at different ways to streamline processes, looking at eligibility more closely. We want our systems to turn into a no wrong door type of situation, looking at things that support whole systems, whole families, whole children. And so we want our community services to be reflective of that. We're looking at early interventions for special needs kiddos. I know CCRC has been working on a developmental screenings bill that we are bringing back this year, and we really hope to see some success with. We are still looking at reimbursement rates and the true cost of care. This is a really long and detailed process and something that we think, the legislators are certainly behind, but I think maybe they thought that the job was done last year and there's a lot of work to do. So reminding them of what's left to do and keeping it, the importance of keeping it on a timely schedule and everything they promised is something that we are also very much talking about. Keeping family fees low and where they are. We have that new schedule in. It's fantastic. It's only funded to be like that through the end of 25 fiscal year, I believe. So really also talking about how important that is, increasing childcare slot availability. There is a ton of talk going on right now between a lot of our organizations and advocates on exactly how many slots we're getting this year and from where. And I know specifically with general childcare, there's a lot of confusion going on. So definitely working on clarifying that and also talking about the importance of increasing access through those slots. Looking at staffing ratios is something we're also paying quite close attention to for our special needs kiddos and providing training for the workforce that does work with special needs students. And I don't know, Justina, if there's a hyperlink in the talking points
There is,
section.
and
Yeah.
it'll be available on the website. So hopefully this is a list that can kind of help you decide if you want to have a meeting with them to talk about maybe 1 or 2 of these issues that's important to you. And then the talking points is an actual document that you can leave behind with them.
Fantastic. And then next, I believe we're going to talk about a couple budget things, the hot gossip on the street. We don't have a lot of money this year. It's a deficit. I believe that it's reaching about 40 billion per year, projections for the next 3 years, but definitely this year we have about 39 billion gap to close, which is pretty big. Our messaging as far as budget goes this year is we just want to hold the line. Childcare and developmental service, childcare and development programs are one of the few programs within the Department of Social Services that did not see a cut to funding in this January governor's proposed budget, which is amazing. So our job is to really help communicate with legislators this year that we have to hold that line, because the possibility of cuts is definitely still out there as things get a little more sticky and people start fighting over the coins on the floor as we close in towards May revise. So now is definitely the time to advocate before that May budget is out. We want to be talking about how much childcare has been improved with the low family fees and increased reimbursement rates. We want to share the positive impacts. Legislators really care about the good things that are happening in their communities because of this, and they want to brag to other legislators about the good things that are happening in their communities. So really keeping a positive light on this, despite the fact that there is still such great need within our system. And as well, talking about our continued needs is very important. We really need to help legislators and their staff folks understand that these improvements can't go away at the end of fiscal year in 2025. We have funding that's holding our system together right now, but it's not going to keep it together if it all goes away and we don't have everything in place to keep us going forward. That is meaning the new alternative methodology needs to be ready to go by July 1st, 2025. So that's a huge message. And again, talking about keeping on that timeline, keeping the commitments, all of those things. And then we're also really wanting to take this opportunity with a tight fiscal climate and tight budget to look at administrative changes that aren't very costly, to tighten up and tweak processes that are bogging down our system and creating barriers for families and children that we serve. I know personally one of the bills I've been working on is not going to be moving forward because it's too costly. But the legislator definitely wants to stay helping families and children if he can do it without spending a lot of money. So these administrative changes are of a really high interest to legislators right now, and it's a really good time to make those shifts when there's a downturn in our budget.
I can just add a couple things on here too, Juliet. Sometimes we get so focused on advocating, and I know that's what Juliet and I do, like with legislators all the time, that we can sometimes forget there's other avenues that we can advocate through. So, for example, for the new rate methodology, there's actually a rate and quality work group that has been put together, and they have been meeting all through 2023, and they have, I believe, 3 more meetings that are scheduled for 2024. That is something that, even though it's a work group that's established, you can join those meetings. And I can send some information out. They do have a public comment time during those meetings. It is an absolutely fantastic way to have your voice heard for your program on why it's so important to change that methodology. I'll follow up with an email after this, maybe tomorrow, to let you know the dates and the links for that. There's also going to be budget hearings, so back to legislative process and the budget process. In April, the budget committees for education are going to be meeting. That's a great time to mark your calendar to call in, talk about your program, tell them why it's so important that these, like what Juliet talked about, continues through 2025 and you don't lose the progress that we've made. And then the May revise, so the governor released the January version, and then there's a lot of talking and communication and wheeling and dealing going on right now. And then in May 10th, he'll release another one and says, okay, after all that, here's what we have to work with. So I would say there's some advocacy opportunities in between there. And then on May 10th, we'll know more and we can come up with, another plan on how to deal with some of the issues then. But like Juliet said, being positive about the impacts that we've received, the good things that have come from it, I think is a great way to show them, hey, it worked. Let's keep it going, because we know there's no money there right now. So I think it's a great method to continue the funding. Is there anything else that you want to add, Juliet, on this? You might be muted.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry. New headset, gotta learn the buttons. I just was saying that I think even though it is a tough fiscal year, in a lot of the spaces Justina and I share, our co-advocates have talked a lot about you all are so essential to our communities. And that was something back in 2020 that was at the forefront of everybody's minds. And so maybe also bringing the spirit back of, hey, we are super essential. Hey, we matter. We are the infrastructure that holds up almost our whole economies, and just reminding folks of where we've been a little bit. Like, this is not new stuff. And so, just be proud of the value that you bring to your communities, be proud of that, show up with that pride, show up with the positive impact stories, and, just really impart that like there's more work to do and we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep hearing from us. So yeah.
And every voice matters. So I'm hoping by giving you this information that you'll find something that you really connect with and think, okay, this is something that I can do, and I can get the voice of my community out there to the leaders and the legislators, because it does make a difference. The next slide I'm going to share with you is just a screenshot of a document that we're going to provide to you. It's something that I put together that would help you when you're ready to do this sort of action of setting up a meeting and advocating for an issue, that walks you through it so that you can think through it and then take the actions and write everything down in this. I think it's going to go in the chat. It's also going to be on the website as well. But if we look through it, you can see you can write like a short description of what the issue is that you're seeing in your community and in your agency. And if you know the background of the issue, you can put that in there, because sometimes that's nice to talk about when you're at a meeting with a staffer. You can fill them in on the history of what's going on with that issue. And if there's any bills that are currently out there that address that issue, I put a box there for that. What are your priorities? Like, what do you want to see happen to fix the issue that's going on? The box that says what committee and subcommittees are involved are when that bill or budget bill starts going through the process. It's good to know who, what committee it's going to be on, who's running those committees, because those are the people that you want to reach out to. So it's not always just your legislator in your district. Sometimes you're strategic about who you're going to contact, because maybe there's a really important bill that you want to see passed. And as it goes through the legislative process, and if you need a little refresher on that, you can go to the resource page, and those videos are up there, the Legislation 101, part 1 and 2. So you can call into those committee meetings and tell them why it's important. So it's important to know who the chairs are. So I put a couple boxes on there to help walk you through that process. And all the links that you need are on the resource pages to find all that information. And you're always welcome to contact me, and I'll give you anything that you need. Who are your fellow supporters? And what I mean by that is, if you're wanting support in this, you don't want to do it all on your own, rely on your network. And through ECE Voices, you automatically have a network of peers that are wanting to see the same changes happen that you want. So you can reach out to me and say, hey, who are my peers in my area that I can reach out to and get started on this? And I'll let you know contact information, or just maybe your peers that you have within your own network also. And then it's always good to know what the opposition's side is, because you want to be able to address whatever issue that they feel like it's going to create if that law were to be passed. So it's good to be able to address those fears or issues, or if they're really legit, finding a solution to whatever it is that could cause a hiccup in that process. And then just thinking through, like, what is your objective with this policy or this budget issue? What advocacy strategies would work best? So that's talking about these specific advocacy trainings that we're having. So seeing them in person, bringing them out, writing a letter, all different, making a phone call, sending an email, all different ways that you can advocate. And I always say there's no bad way to advocate. You just pick one that fits your style the best, your schedule, the time that you have available, and do that. And then realistically thinking about the time that you have available, because I know you all are very, very busy. So if you don't have the time, to set up a whole letter writing campaign, you can just use a letter template and send it in. And that works just as good. So I will send that out to you so that you have this. And if you need copies of it, let me know. So we're winding down to the end of our training here. I hope that you have gotten some useful information and that you feel more comfortable in the idea of setting up in-person meetings with your legislators. I can tell you from my experience over this last year, I've been setting up a lot of those meetings. They are always happy to be there in their communities and meeting with their community members. I've not had any bad experiences with setting up meet and greets. We usually have about 20 people there. We have 3 or 4 legislators, maybe a district supervisor, people that are leaders in your community come, and they just have a nice conversation about what's happening in subsidized care. And they learn a lot from each other. And it opens doors too, so that you understand a process better than maybe you had before. And now you have a new contact of someone who can fill you in on what's going on the inside behind the closed doors. So I would really encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to set up a meeting and getting all of your peers together to meet with them. But I'd like to kind of take a poll, if you will, on how you feel about this information that you received tonight. Did you find it useful? Are you feeling more comfortable and confident? You can put it in the chat if you want. Any thumbs up, any thumbs down? I see a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, good. Well, if you think of any questions that you have after this training, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always, always happy to answer any questions. You can reach out to Juliet too. And remember, she's the lead advocate for Sacramento. So if you're from Sacramento, you know someone from Sacramento that's an ECE, send them her direction. She's the mentor in that area. Our next training is going to be in a couple weeks. It's going to be a letter writing campaign. So we're going to go into detail on what does that even mean? How do you get that started? Who's involved with it? Where do you send the letters? How do you host forums? And a lot of great information like that. So we hope to see you on the 20th. And I just want to thank you for coming tonight and spending your evening with us. We always appreciate seeing you here. Juliet, anything you want to say?
No, just thank you all so much for coming out and being engaged. It's going to be a really interesting and fun year. I really look forward to sharing more with you all in this space. And yeah, please do reach out if you are in my area. It's a big area. So really looking forward to connecting with you all more.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.